Fans, we're back. College sports this week. It was a rough week to be a football fan above the high school level in Tennessee.
Well, unless you're a Vanderbilt fan, they won pretty handily. Really, who is?
I don't know any. I don't know any of those creatures.
No.
Be a special person to be a Vandy fan.
It was a closer game than I expected in the first half. But, we played LSU close in the first half. We managed to play Georgia really close. Well, the Georgia game was pretty close anyways, 20-12. Alabama and LSU are just powerful teams right now. They're steamrolled everybody that comes across them. And Alabama and LSU steamrolled us. LSU steamrolled Auburn this week too, but even with their suspended players. It's going to be a big game in November the 5th.
Yeah, and look what Alabama did to Florida.
That's one of the positives I can take from the Tennessee game. At least they didn't beat our players into the hospital like they did half of Florida's team. And that was at Florida. We played them, hats off to like Pilardi, he finally actually came through and made some big field goals, and his pass frankly looked better than anything Matt Sims threw up there all night.
Matt Sims may be the worst quarterback I've ever seen. He wouldn't start at Campbell County High School this year.
Honestly, it's between Steve Altori and Sims probably for the worst quarterbacks maybe who's played at UT since ever.
And let's just point out that Jonathan Crompton's actually in that mix, and he's not one of the top two.
I wouldn't even put Randy Sanders pretty bad, but I would see him possibly play. Sims, he got worse, and I don't see how you can get that much worse going into your senior year.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably Justin Worley is going to start against South Carolina.
I know that he has to play against tough defenses, and Alabama and LSU are very good. LSU's got an okay pass defense, actually. I wouldn't call it very good. It's ranked in somewhere in the 40s in the country.
They've got a really good run defense.
But Alabama, there were people open against Alabama. It's just that Sims, if the ball has to be thrown more than 5 yards away, Sims has trouble with it. Rick Rogers made some catches 7 or 8 yards downfield where he had to make just diving, leaping catches because the ball was going so slowly. Sims makes terrible decisions. Took a sack right before he could run. Look at him going to run. He just throw the ball away. He was nearly well out of the tackle. Box. Dooley mentioned that specifically as just a mental mistake that he's making.
Literally threw a ball right to an Alabama
player. Threw a ball directly to an Alabama player. It's just the running game actually has gotten a little bit better, but the passing game is so far down and it's just so bad that it doesn't matter. At this point, you hate to say, really particularly bad things about Sam because he's gave it his all, but he's just not talented enough and not physically gifted enough to play quarterback at this level. He's just not.
This is the SEC we're talking about.
I'm glad to see that Coach Dooley, even though he didn't get to do much against Alabama, he said it's just mainly because they were in such a bad spot on the field when he got in, but he's taken Worley's red shirt off and said that the best quarterback's going to play against South Carolina. And frankly, there's no downside to it. If the ultimate happens and Worley gets hurt, you just be back to Sims anyway.
That's true.
But right now, Sims is a senior. He's not going to be here next year. There's no benefit to playing because he's not going to give you a better chance to win. Frankly, it would be hard to find a quarterback who would give you less of a chance to win.
And Worley, all sorts of potential.
Worley, 6'4", 200. They say he actually got a very accurate passing arm. He set every high school record you could set just about it. He's a Gatorade National Player of the Year, the first one we've had since Peyton Manning signed here. South Carolina's got a good defense. South Carolina actually has the #1 pass defense in the country. So it's going to be tough for him against South Carolina, but I just don't see how it can be worse than Sims. No, I guess he could come out and throw 10 or 12 interceptions, but I worry that every pass Sims throws is going to be an interception anyway. And Sims only had like 6 completions against Alabama in the game. And you can't beat anybody if you're only completing 6 passes.
Yeah.
We were like 2. We immediately went from first in the country in third down conversion rate to we've been dead last ever since Sims started. We were like 2 for 16 this week and maybe 2 for 20 or something against LSU. It's just awful. It's an atrocious conversion rate on 3rd down. So we either have to go for it on 4th down, and Sims wasn't handling the ball properly and didn't even make 6 inches on the sneak. You can't carry the ball down around your waist when you're trying to sneak.
No. You know, on the upside, we did make the change at center.
There was no squirrely snaps this week. Unfortunately, we put James Stone at left tackle, and he got some penalties and got beat a few times. Against Alabama, that's to be expected. A rowdy crowd, and they've got a great defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, probably the loudest environment Tennessee has played in all year.
Overall, it's hard to say, you know, if we're going to. I can't imagine we won't get to 6 wins. The Vanderbilt game might be pretty tough because Vanderbilt actually also has a good pass defense this year. Surprisingly, they're in the top 15 in the nation in pass defense. They've not played a lot of really good teams in the past that needs to pass it against them, but they're better than an average Vanderbilt team. And I really can't see any way in the world we don't beat Middle Tennessee State in Kentucky.
Right. I mean, I would be more worried about losing to Middle Tennessee State.
Honestly, if Kentucky was 10-1 right now, I would still think we'd probably beat them because we just beat Kentucky every year. You know.
The most lopsided rivalry in the country.
Yeah, longest win streak in the nation currently against another team is ours against Kentucky, and that's nearly 30 years now. So, just South Carolina's beatable because they just have a bad offense right now without Lattimore. Maybe getting an extra week to prepare will help them. But you know, last week they were only able to score 14 points against Mississippi State. Without Lattimore, they got rid of Garcia, which actually probably helped him a little because he was pretty bad too, but apparently he had a little bit of an alcohol problem. Spurrier, you just know he's going to have some wrinkles to throw out there in his passing game, but he's just riding on his defense right now, and his defense is winning ball games for him. They got Javon Clowney, who actually was an arch rival of Justin Worley in high school, and Worley's team managed to beat Clowney's every time they played.
Well, this should play out interesting.
You know, Clowney, he's the defensive end that everybody said could have immediately went to the NFL. He was so good. I mean, most people herald him as the best high school prospect in the last 5 to 10 years. And he's actually done really well, started every game for South Carolina. And he puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So at least Worley will be used to seeing it.
You know, also, you know, in the college football, Oklahoma took a big loss yesterday.
Yeah, I just, ironically, during the Alabama halftime, before the Oklahoma game started, because of the lightning delay, one of their commentators, I can't remember who, I think it may have been Robert Smith, the running back from Ohio State.
Not the guy from the Cure.
Not quite. He had just said the thing that separates Oklahoma, Alabama, and LSU from Boise State, Clemson, and Stanford was the powerful defenses. He was right about 2 of the 3 teams having a powerful defense. Oklahoma gave up almost 600 yards and close to 50 points to Texas Tech in that loss.
So now you're looking at the national title picture, just got a little bit less money.
Wisconsin also losing to Michigan State on a crazy Hail Mary play where the ball was batted around and the referees initially called him down to the 1-inch line and had to review the tape to see that the ball did indeed touch the plane. And crazy ending, but Wisconsin fell from the ranks of the unbeaten. And Wisconsin's they have a solid program. If they lose to a team every year they probably shouldn't lose to, sometimes 2. There's a typical Big Ten team, and probably would have went on and lost their ball game. Probably will anyway. But, Boise State probably not going to be defeated this year until a potential bowl game. Clemson. Auburn's not very good this year and ranked about 75th or 80th versus the pass, and Clemson was able to pass the ball and then score a lot and outscore them. Virginia Tech, they've played no one but Clemson and got beat by them, so the ACC's bad. Georgia Tech is okay but not great, and they play Clemson. That's probably one of Clemson's bigger roadblocks standing in their way the rest of the year from an undefeated season. And of course, again against South Carolina, which wasn't helped any for South Carolina's sake with Lattimore being out. But South Carolina will probably be the best team Clemson plays all year until they get to their bowl game. They have a good shot at going undefeated because of that if Georgia Tech doesn't beat them next week. Because Georgia Tech's got that unorthodox offense with the option, and they can score, and Clemson gives up a lot of points.
Of course, Oklahoma State is in that same breath.
Oklahoma State, it's going to come into their game against Oklahoma.
Of course, then there's Stanford, who's undefeated, and
I'm not certain if Stanford's played USC yet. If that's probably the best shot of Stanford getting beat. I can't remember. They may have beaten Oregon already. But I'm not sure. It'll be Stanford, Oregon, USC in that mix because every Pac-10 team plays each other. They may not have played each other yet. I've not looked. So I don't follow the Pac-10 as closely as I probably should. I know Stanford always ends the season against Cal. So I would say that they may have Oregon and Cal and USC to go. If they do, that's going to be much tougher for them to go undefeated against that schedule. Kansas State, they're 7-0. The teeth of their schedule is getting ready to start. They play Oklahoma State, Oklahoma State, and Texas in through the next 3 weeks.
so the chances of them staying undefeated, not that great.
Anything's possible, but probably going to be hard for them to stay undefeated as they actually start playing the good teams on their schedule. It's just worked out to where they've not played any really good teams yet. Which I'd say it's the same as the case for Clemson, really. And
So, what are the odds that we see an Alabama LSU national title game at this point?
I'd actually say that unless one team just stomps the other one, if they play a close game, there's a good shot that a rematch will come to pass. Everybody clamored for it a few years ago when Ohio State beat Michigan like 49-48 in that big epic game to decide who's going to be the best team of all time. And, of course, Florida made the championship game and stomped Ohio State.
Yeah, that was a beat. Way to go, Big Ten.
It's legitimate when there's two SEC teams this good that they could rematch. And frankly, if I was a voter, and I'm not a big rah-rah SEC guy, I wish everybody else besides Tennessee lost every game they play. It does us no good, does Tennessee no good at all for Alabama or LSU to win national championships, or Florida, or Auburn, or anybody else. It just hurts us from recruiting. So I'm not saying this because I'm a rah-rah SEC guy, but the SEC frankly deserves, if anybody ever has deserved a rematch for a national championship game, it would be the SEC. The only other rematch I can remember happening was Florida and Florida State, and Florida beat Florida State pretty badly in that one. That really made Florida State fans mad because they beat Florida in their last regular season game of the year. Then they turned and played for the national title. That was before the BCS when it was the bowl, what was that called?
The Bowl
Yeah,
Alliance.
the Bowl Alliance is when they had everybody with the Rose Bowl with it because the Big Ten and Pac-10 refused to join it. But I could see a rematch happening. I don't see any teams out there that are even close to Alabama and LSU defensively, and really not that many that are that close to them offensively. But nobody combines the two like they do.
So it could happen, fans.
Unless there's, like I say, a stomping, I don't see how it can be avoided. Unless one of them stumbles somewhere else along the way. It's possible. Auburn is always going to play Alabama tough in the Iron Bowl. That's just something that always happens. And the SEC championship game, it's probably going to be Georgia in it. Because I can't imagine South Carolina holding up the rest of the year without Lattimore in their lineup. And Georgia doesn't play any of the big teams from the West. So they've got a leg up on everybody because of that. And Georgia's actually got a lot of talent. It's just that Rick is not a really good coach and doesn't always utilize it properly. That would be a first. And, really people couldn't argue that the SEC didn't deserve to get two. Or especially an undefeated Clemson team because the ACC is terrible. Like so last year, Virginia Tech lost to Boise State, and they lost to a Division I AA team, and then won every game in the ACC and the ACC championship game, and then they got blown out their ball.
And of course, there's always going to be the people crying that Boise State should be in there.
Now, Boise State did beat Georgia, and they do pretty well in the BCS bowls, but it's just not fair to put them in there. That's just my opinion. It's not fair. You can't put a team that doesn't have to play a tough game every week. I was looking. The SEC has 10 of the top 40 pass defenses in the country right now. No other league has more than 2 or 3. And then, even though Auburn's last at around 70th or 75th or something because Auburn's got a bad defense this year. It's like Tennessee's 38th or 39th, and Ole Miss is about 42nd.
And Ole Miss is awful.
Everybody in the SEC, it's just a different level of football that's played here. And, you know, Boise State can win an individual game, but it's the beating you take over the course of the season. It's perfectly illustrated by Florida post-Alabama game. I'm not sure if they've won a game since that Alabama game. Alabama stomped the life out of them. And that's what happened if Boise State played Alabama 1 week and LSU the next week like we did. You would be beaten to a pulp. That's what happens when you play, it would happen to Boise State in the Big Ten or in the Big 12 or the Pac-10. It's not fair to go out and play 1 or 2 tough games a year and then just play the rest against teams you vastly outmatch and expect to play for the national title.
And that's a weak conference.
I mean, it's even borderline for Clemson, in my opinion, to do it. Because, like I said, as the ACC is bad as it is. I mean, I figure if Clemson does make it, and Alabama or LSU ends up in the championship game against them, it's going to be a brutal beating again. But honestly, I would say that Stanford is probably the best equipped to handle either one of those teams out of all the undefeateds remaining. Because Stanford's got a really good quarterback in Andrew Luck. And as Oregon showed last year, those Pac-10 teams are actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean,
USC showed a few times over the years.
I would actually consider the Pac to be the number 2 conference.
Oh yeah, easily. Because they actually have a lot of speed. The California's got a lot of good athletes and speed. But, you know, SEC is a big speed for the most part, and they're smaller speed, but they still got it. And I say Andrew Luck's a really good quarterback. When you got a quarterback that good, you've got a good shot at competing with anybody.
Well, fans, I believe we're going to wrap it up here this week. Make it out to Oak Ridge this weekend. We're up to Jellicoe. Saturday, head down to the middle school championship. Fans, we'll see you next week. That strange blinking light there.
It was occasionally winky. We should have did sports check while we played darts. And you live from the dartatorium. You kind of tell there's just decided lack of prancing today.
Oh no. Damn near late. God, I want to come in and just scissor fest 2000. Because you know Stormy and Ray were both here. We know Gabby was here. Obviously Carmen and Tags were here.
I wonder if Tags is home. It's not like her to sleep all day like this.
I've been kind of wondering that for myself.
Maybe that with Kevin Ron.
They may actually be scissoring.
I'll probably be upset for Pete and her.
Well,